Welcome, everybody. My name is Wendy Balman, and along with Bob Claybrook, we're going to be supporting and hosting this fabulous panel that you see before you. So a little bit about myself, and then I'll hand it over to Bob. So I'm a senior consultant with the Creating We Institute, and part of my area's main focus of fascination is this kind of what do you get when you bring together focusing on trust, neuroscience, and leadership development. So that's been my area of focus and exploration for my last years. Currently, I am a leadership development coach, both internally and externally with small and large companies. So happy to be here, and Bob, I'll pass it over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome, or good day, everyone, I should say. My name is Bob Claybrook. I'm a technology executive for 25 plus years, former CIO, all in the corporate world, and currently consulting. So really looking forward to the conversation with the folks. Just in the introductions and size, initial thoughts, it's challenging times we're in, and I hope everyone is safe today as we get started here. So I'll pass it over to Nigel to go on for a short intro.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to my studio that I had to build in the Zoom-y sort of time so I could actually look like I was semi-professional. I'm known for being a guy who used to work at Toyota. I'm the ex-chief of Agile, the first guy ever to be the chief of Agile at a Toyota company, namely Toyota Connected. I also sort of knocked something together called Scrum the Toyota Way for the Agile community, which seemed to be popular for a while. And recently I was involved with some people much cleverer than I in creating this thing you see behind me called the Flow system. I'm now the CEO of the Flow Consortium, and I'm probably described by many on LinkedIn as something of a disruptor. I'll leave it there and see where the conversation leads us.
Sunil, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Wendy. Hi, Bob. Nice to see you again. And
nice to see you as well.
I'm normally an outlier, and I'm sitting on the other side of the world. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can. You faded for just a second,
Okay.
but I can hear you fine right now.
Yeah, there seems to be a lag. I think it takes for these data packets to reach the other side of the world a little time, right? So I'm sitting in India.
Yes.
It's morning for you guys. It's late evening for me. Well, I've been a sort of an outlier because I've been an entrepreneur all my life, done manufacturing, consulting, facilitation, leadership development, advisory kind of work. Sai approached me because he said, I go all over the place, and that kind of is like my introduction. But the quick way to introduce myself is that right now I run Idea Farms, which is a company that I founded about 18 years ago. And this is a company that does design in tech and human-centered design. And we take it from there.
Thank you. Himanshu?
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here with all of you. In my current role, I'm the founder and CEO of Centro Strategic Mindset, with a mission to groom strategic minds who can deliver bold business impact. I've had 6 careers in my life. Started as a geologist, worked in the military for 20 years. I was a colonel, part of combat operation and United Nations consulting. And I was a chief strategy officer and leadership development for a large company, TCS, Tata Consultancy Services. And after that, I founded COSM with a mission. I'm known by 4 names. I call myself thinker, writer, speaker, and coach. That's what I do for a living. And I consider myself a student of life and teacher of experience.
Excellent. Primi, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, my name is Primi, and I work as a head agile at Meira. It's a software development company in Spain with a headquarters in Madrid. And I have been a software development for 25 years, and the last 10 years enjoy agile transformations with coaching, training, and consulting from teams, managers at a strategic level, and to move innovation and agile to promote a more human leadership, to create a more sustainable culture in companies. At this moment is the focus, and a lot of customers, but banking sectors, insurance, tourists, and automation, for example, in Spain.
Excellent. Mark?
Great, thanks, Rob. Good day, everyone. I am pleased to join Wendy and Rob in this distinguished panel, and I really look forward to today's discussion. I am Mark DiGiovanni, co-founder of ATX Advisory Services. We're a technology advisory services firm, and our passion is helping mid-market companies leverage enterprise software and data to fulfill their mission. I personally have over 20 years of consulting experience, including management consulting, technology strategy, business intelligence, ERP, and enterprise risk management. And our firm is based in Maine in the United States, and we work across a broad range of industries.
Excellent. So I guess to start the panel off today, we've heard a few things this morning from the presenter early on. I just want to go around and get your perspectives on the themes of today's conference, and what we're experiencing in this event as we go through COVID and the world today. So Sunil, you want to start us off?
So can you guys hear me?
Yes. I think there's a slight delay, but as soon as you come in, you sound fine.
Okay. So I'm someone who is not very attached to any of these words, because what typically happens is that we kind of, attach ourselves to a label, and we quickly try to find meaning or do some sense making around the labels, and then these labels just won't go away. So there's lots of stuff happening about, what's going to be the next normal about. So the word normal you get attached to in such a way that you kind of look for equilibrium and stability where there is none. So I guess, one of the things that I would like to just simply put out there is we've grown up in an artificial sense of stability and predictability. And it just needed for many of these things to come together, including COVID. And I promise I didn't have anything to do with COVID, but actually the fun of living and the fun of human life is actually about unpredictability, uncertainty, chaos. And that's why human beings are who they are, because, it's not just fending for survival, but it's for much more meaning in life. So let me put this out there that, can we not make friends with chaos and uncertainty, and see how we can thrive in that kind of an environment, rather than for wanting something to come back to, go back to something which is going back is actually going backwards, right? I mean, that's the sense I get. So I see a lot of people when I speak to executives, and I speak to several of these people who now reach out and say, you know what, when do you think this lockdown is going to lift? When do you think things are going to happen that we will go back to something which has the semblance of what we've come from? And I just don't know how to answer that question, because, going back is kind of regress from the way I look at it. We need to progress, and if you need to progress, then you need to move forward and not go back. So I heard a very interesting sentence from someone called Leandro Herrero, who Sai introduced me to on LinkedIn. And he said, feedback is for machines. What human beings need is feed forward. And I thought that was brilliant, So if I could just leave that on the table and see where we could take that one thought.
I love that. Feed forward. That's excellent. Go ahead, Himanshu.
Thank you. So I'll pick it up from Sunil about the normal. And one thing which I often resonate is secret for happiness is high tolerance for ambiguity. And we got used to so much of predictability that the moment it comes in thoughts or thinking, we just find ourselves as if uprooted. So how do we develop that tolerance for ambiguity. And sometimes, especially in times like this, it's not fair to overtly put pressure about future. I think this is a good time to think about what Eckhart Tolle says, power of now. And this time is also about survival. So I do a lot of work on purpose, and somebody asked, what is the purpose of life? And when I was talking about, he said, somebody else said the purpose, there is no purpose of life. Purpose of life is to live. I said, okay, purpose of life is to live, but can we add that purpose of life to live gracefully? Can we survive gracefully? And the moment you bring this element of surviving gracefully, you want to discover the gifts that you have. You want to play out those gifts. You want to be of service to someone. You want to serve someone. So currently, the time is about graceful survival. And the rules of survival are quite different. Rules of thriving are quite different. In the rules of survival, 3 things really resonate with me, and I call them preserve, reserve, and conserve. So what do we need to preserve? We need to preserve our health. We need to preserve our vigor. What do we need to conserve is the vigor, the energy, the assets that we have. And then preserve, reserve, and conserve. Conserve the assets for future leverage, because time will come back when whatever we could preserve, reserve, and conserve now, we could actually leverage it more effectively. Crises are not meant only to think that how can we come back to where we were. It's also time to think, how do we come back and go beyond where we were? And if you look at the various examples of history, whether after World War or Britain Board or any other crisis, the world has come way ahead of where it was. So the mindset is about, okay, for the time being, see, how can we preserve, reserve, and conserve? A lot of us actually set very high expectation. I did strategy offsite for many organizations. 2020 was like a Everest. Everybody's going to be 10 times, 25 times, etc. Today, everything is gone for a toss. And those leaders are finding it hard to accept the truth that all the goals, aspirations that we set, they are lying deterred away. So how do we recalibrate? How do we reset our expectations? So that kind of mindset is important at this point of time, and leaders need to have that bifocal vision, one for now and one for future. So leave it there and then pick it up from there.
Excellent. Mark?
Yeah, that's great, Himanshu. I think my perspective is fairly similar, in that I actually see kind of an opportunity for greatness kind of through this crisis. I think the crisis has kind of served as a wake up, in that we were complacent, that there was kind of a formula for success. And that formula, essentially relied on good people, strong culture, efficient process, and optimized systems. And those things are fundamentally sound. But there was also an expectation that leaders had the ability to anticipate change and proactively adjust. And I think that's where maybe we failed as leaders, and maybe where there's been a silence, which was kind of a question kind of going into this forum, is, kind of why has there been such a kind of a leadership silence? And I think a lot of leaders got caught flat-footed, and instead of being able to anticipate the change, they themselves have been forced to change. And it's taken them a long time to realize that kind of where they are on the change curve as part of that spectrum. So I see kind of the way out is that kind of self-realization of kind of where we are today, but not kind of giving up on the fundamentals, but thinking about a greater future.
I almost feel like we optimized ourselves into a fragile state, and we've been shaken.
Yeah.
It's just a very interesting word. Primi, thoughts?
We have a problem among a lot of customers because it's not understand the situation and the need for help at this time. Being vulnerable makes you stronger, because from the synergies of such as help, the necessary resilience is generate this impact to learn and to improve. In this moment, more than ever, we need to work resilience in the companies and in the people, because who have broken with the crisis, and if we have been lucky enough to grow in the situation, we will come out not robust but anti-fragile, because only with courage and a new leadership, more human, you will create the new opportunity, and the new normally is a fail, not exist, because now the crisis will continue we have a vacuum. And resilience is not staying like 6 months ago. It's resilience is what opportunity to learning, to help, to improve in a future, because resilience is always from the past, not from the present. If you don't have the intention to improve and to learn, not as is resilient. Is in Spain we have a phrase is let me stay as I was. This is the mindset in a lot of customers and in a lot of companies. Through a more human leadership, we can help to create this awareness, to create a change, an opportunity, and a safe environment to experiment and to embrace uncertainty and stop the fear in the people, to explore a more human and more robust companies in the future.
Now, one point, Primi, you touched on from a leadership perspective, recognizing your fears and being able to move forward. I mean, this is obviously a very stressful time, and for everyone to understand the fears that we all have as we move forward. Nigel, thoughts?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Primi. Go ahead.
No, you need to create a new scenarios to simulate the problems to improve in the future. But not
Yes.
all customers will have this courage to improve.
Because they're too fragile, being optimized.
So
Nigel?
Yeah, Nigel,
Oh,
I
go
saw
ahead.
you
I'm sorry.
nodding several times around, like, we need to embrace chaos, and and then I'm seeing this very orderly picture behind you. So I'm curious.
You probably can't see that, but it does say complexity thinking. So,
All right.
I mean, look, I'm the least qualified of all the people in this panel, because there's some incredibly, bright geniuses here with great philosophical backgrounds and obviously deep expertise in anthropology. And these are subjects that are things that I don't have great skills and knowledge in. I come from it from a much more practical point of view. We have a world that, it's, what is it? All organizations are optimized to get the results that they're designed for, or some, I'm paraphrasing it badly, but essentially we've created systems, and with the focus of those systems and the way we behave, we have the results of what we've now received are a result of what we've created. So as we start to now look at this, and we've been reading some of the comments as the speakers were talking about human-centered design, human factors. Some of the work on this picture behind me is focused heavily on team science, on behaviors, behavioral factors, on things like psychological safety, active listening, some of the things that were being talked about at the beginning of this conference. And these are the things we now need to start focusing on more. Yes, in the complexity world, and yes, thriving in chaos. Well, I probably won't want to thrive in chaos, but I'd like to understand how to survive in chaos and how to start to understand complex problems, as opposed to sort of the standard approaches. You slap a framework on and give you a set of ABCs to follow and we're all good. And the problem with human nature is that we forget really quickly. We've gone through numerous crises, numerous financial crises, and all the lessons we learned from the previous crisis, we failed to adapt, and we failed to do anything. Because I'm now seeing, I'm not kidding you, on LinkedIn yesterday, I started seeing people now describing themselves as resilience consultants. And my head sort of explodes, because, really, we've never done resilience before. And as Primi said, resilience is about responding to the crisis. When we don't want to recover, should I say, from the crisis. We want to prevent us suffering from a future crisis. So we need to start understanding complexity thinking. We need to really leverage the elements of team science, human factors, people, communications, the challenges we're seeing with the sort of, you know, justified complaints about institutional racism and the challenges we're seeing with COVID-19. These are all factors of our behaviors and the way we don't listen, the way that we behave in a certain way for our own ends. And we now need, and just my last point, and I'm sort of jumping around here because thoughts are buzzing around my head. But yesterday, there was a conversation in a group I'm part of about wearing masks in public, and the objection of some people to wearing masks, and the sudden spike in COVID-19 in Texas, where I live, and in Florida, where my daughter lives. And I go out into the local neighborhoods around Dallas when we go to the store, and we're wearing a mask, carrying a bottle of hand sanitizer, and we're pretty obsessive with how we sort of clean everything we touch. But the majority of the people are walking around without a mask. And then a friend of mine, a colleague of mine in the complexity world, said that, and she's based in Singapore, she said that in their culture, people wear a mask to protect other people, not to protect themselves. And I think this leads to the whole human factors, behaviors.
The human side.
Yeah, the human side, and the fact that culture is a product of our behaviors. And if we want a better culture, we need to look at our behaviors. I'll leave it there.
Excellent. So we've gone around. I guess what are some of the benefits that we're seeing? Nigel, I don't know if you want to comment on some of the things that, you know, it's been 90 days plus here in the U.S. What are some of the benefits? I know we're talking about taking advantage of the crisis, you know, own it. So what are some of the benefits we're starting to see as a result?
I think one of the things, and I wrote an article on this a few weeks ago, is that we've realized that, and I come from a practical point of view. I come from, you know, well, how are we going to use this? And I know that Mark's very much in that same world as I am, and Primi as well. And I don't know the other two gentlemen as well, so apologies for that. But we started to realize that a lot of things that we did, we actually didn't need to do. We started to realize that a lot of the things we were doing were just wasteful. We were expending energy doing things that had no value. And a lot of the focus of my work is how do we produce value for somebody who perceives value in what we deliver, whether that's a company, an organization, a non-profit, a charity. We all have a purpose. And I think Himanshu was talking about sort of going towards this purpose motive, which is we have a purpose to deliver value to somebody, and whether that's to each other or to a customer or to somebody who receives the benefit of what we do. So I think one of the big lessons that I've learned is that we spend a lot of time, whether you call it bureaucracy, red tape, compliance, lots of words out there, BS, which we discovered were inhibiting constraints. And now what we're looking at is how do we create enabling constraints? We need guardrails, you know, we need guidance, we need mentorship. But we don't need to have these armies of people created to make life difficult. And I think we've realized that as everybody scattered to the four corners, went back to their homes, started setting up studios and trying to keep the dogs and the kids quiet while they're at work, we started to realize a lot of things we did, we don't actually need to do. The way the Fed rushed through trillions of dollars worth of stimulus, whether advisable or not advisable is a bit different debate, and I'm not an economist, but they managed to rush that through in a matter of days when it would have taken years through normal due process. So we're starting to learn that we can cut waste, we can work differently, and I'm coming back to it. The heart of all that is communication and human factors and behavioral sciences.
And I'd like to hear
removing
from
the rigidity.
Oh, that's
Go
good.
ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, we're all good. We're all just jumping in. So we'd love to hear from the rest of each of the panel, you know, as we're going through, and really as you're having a conversation with each other around some of these topics. Please jump in.
Yeah, so I'll chime in on just some of the other benefits that I think we're seeing. Again, I think this has provided the opportunity for people to take a step back and gain some fresh perspective. I think much like we have in our personal lives, we've probably picked up some hobbies that we've kind of long since abandoned or found other outlets. for that to kind of energize ourselves. And I think within our businesses, and within our clients, we're seeing the same thing. There's longer term things that they've wanted to do that they even haven't had the resources available to do it, or the opportunity to kind of take a pause from day-to-day operations to focus on those longer term strategic things. So I think that's a benefit that we're seeing with our clients. I think businesses have long kind of pushed the desire for greater kind of analytics and automation. That also comes at a price, right? So there's kind of two sides to that, because we talked about maybe getting kind of lulled into kind of systemization. So I think there always needs to be, we don't believe in businesses being data driven. We kind of believe in them being data informed. But there's clearly a push to that we're seeing in our clients, as far as now that people are out of the office, and finding new ways to not only communicate, they need new ways to share information. And I think businesses are starting to figure out better ways to leverage that data, but not relying purely on automated routines that predict what may happen purely based on what's happened in the past, because this hasn't happened in recent memory. And I don't think anyone has good data from the last pandemic to adjust their business based on it. So it also highlights the importance of kind of the human factors of interpreting data, good controls around information, and people making decisions collaboratively.
The models have definitely been reset, that's for sure. The data models have been reset.
Yeah, if I can pick up from Mark, life is all about perspectives. Okay, before this crisis, there was another set of perspective. Now there's a different set of perspectives. So one of the questions I often ask my people, are we going through this crisis, or are we growing through the crisis? Because if you apply the perspective of growing through, there are plenty of opportunities. Look at the changes that are happening. There's two organizations which I know very well, which have large body of employees, 400,000. 70%, there's an organization who came up with a policy that after this, 70% of the people could work from home. Now, could we have taken a decision in a scenario pre-COVID? Never. Everybody would have put challenges, constraints. I call them dominant logics, unorthodoxies that, oh, this cannot be done. But today, because the crisis has come and disrupted our thinking, we are willing to adopt new mental models, new models of working together. So I often say, who are the leaders who are really doing well in this period? And my work entails connecting me to various leaders, and I kind of summed up into a couple of thoughts. So the leaders who are really doing well in this crisis are the ones who, first, they're authentic. So, and they are listening to their inner conscience. They're acting with purpose. So being authentic, listening to their conscience, and acting with purpose. So whenever there is a dilemma, they put themselves, am I doing the right thing, and am I doing the best thing? So it's like a 2x2, and that gives a fair degree of decision making to them. The other point is they have a vision that this too shall pass. One of the lessons I learned from the military, that this too shall pass. Everything has a beginning, it has a middle, it is an end. And which one is the longest? Is the middle. So we have to be prepared to face a longer middle, and that will take its time. So these are the ones, people who really have a perspective in terms of vision. They're demonstrating foresight, and they're looking beyond crisis. Third is, they are really communicating very effectively. So these are the leaders who say, okay, this is what I know, this is what I don't know, and I will take this much time to know and tell you. So people can take a lot of truth, provided leaders have the ability to communicate. And this is where they are also showing their empathy and vulnerability. The last one I spoke about, second last, is tolerance for ambiguity. So this is where the resilience and courage comes. And finally, these guys are very agile. So they are not rooted, oh, in the past we used to do like this. They are very agile in terms of technology adoption, mindset adoption. And something which I can sum up is they have this beginner's mindset. And I think this crisis needs lots of beginner's mindset and not so many experts.
Include the crowd. I would think.
I'm sorry, I was going to pick up, but that is a fantastic phrase. You know, we need more beginners and less experts, because everybody's an expert at the moment, and I'm as guilty as that as everybody else. But what we need is to go back to learning, and what a great statement.
Yeah. Primi, what's your thoughts?
It's Nigel said before a good question with the zombie mode with the people, and at this moment the generation of value in Spain, for example, and Europe is very complicated, because companies and customers are in zombie mode, because don't understand the uncertainty and the crisis. And we have an opportunity, because to generate a value, we move to innovation and experimentation, but we have two problems now. The first problem is how can simulate the next scenarios, because in Europe, for example, at November or December, maybe return the pandemic, because it's a stational pandemic, and in winter come back the virus. And the second point is how we learn to adapt at this moment, but learn to prepare to the future. And the future is in 3 months, not is in 1 year, not have a long time to prepare. It's a short time, and we need experiment and create a new value for the customer, because the companies lost your customers in a short term, not in a long term, in a short term. Because if you have a crisis in 3 months or in 6 months, the problem, you only move 6 months, but stay. And this is the situation, for example, in Europe and in Spain. In Madrid, it's very fair, because it is now we have 3 months in the hand, not in the company. We work, and maybe Holland Bank move to online work to the future. Think about the future for your customers and for your employees, and decide stay at home for every time now, to create more value and more security, more safe for your employers now.
Excellent.
Primi?
Himanshu? Oh, go ahead, Wendy, sorry.
Well, actually, I wanted to jump in because I saw Sunil. I know with the delay, it's a little hard to jump in. And he did post a comment around patterns and how people are familiar with their patterns. And if they're not able to get out of the familiarity, that could, really impact how they're able to cope or thrive. So I'm curious, Sunil, we'll give you a second so you can get back in. What would you like to speak to that in terms of how do you address getting out of those familiar patterns? What's a way to address that?
That's a very nice segue into a question that Sai has asked on the chat. How do we take this conversation to guide us to disrupt ourselves into action, right? So we can keep talking on end about, what we should be doing, etc., etc. So I'll make a few points, and these are at random. And these are also in building on what's already been said. So one of the things is that, if we were to look back in March and think about sitting in June as we are today, and if we had tried to predict, where we would be today, we would have been talking like we are talking today about how we are going to be in August, right? So I don't think that survival is that much of an issue, because all of us as individuals and as companies have survived to whatever extent we could. The problem with companies is that they've put in so much investment and they just can't get, get their heads around wanting to do something that is disruptive, which is for their own good, because all they're trying to do is they're caught in a combination of fear and expectation, where what they're trying to do is to protect what they've already invested into, whether it be soft stuff or hardware or whatever. So if you look at, I advise a few companies who are in the retail sector. All they can think about, the leaders can think about is, okay, we had plans to open 15 more new stores. Fine, so let's not open those stores. And then the next step is that, okay, if we, let's now go and shut the stores that weren't performing that well. Now, this is a trap, right? This doesn't allow you to disrupt yourself. All you're trying to do is to cut your losses. And if you really wanted to go towards the anti-fragility way of thinking, I can give you, if you have the appetite for it, I can give you a very quick story, which is kind of autobiographical. It's when we started Idea Farms, it was right after September 11th. It was crazy and madness for anybody sitting out of India to start an IT or a software company without any customers and without any funding. So people often ask me, how did you start Idea Farms and why did you start Idea Farms? So I said, well, one is that I had a bunch of good people that were really motivated, who wanted to do something that was very different from the run-of-the-mill kind of stuff. Of a crisis is the best time for you to actually go out and create something of value, right? Because you have everything to gain and nothing to lose. Whatever you do will always be better than what you don't do, right? And so when we started Idea Farms, it was the way I can explain it very quickly is that, my mind was telling me that whatever comes to your head as the logical thing to do, put a -1 sign above it and do exactly the reverse. And believe me, we did that and we were able to crack almost everything. You can call it anti-fragility, you can call it madness. But we actually managed to, create something of value. We became a business partner to a company called Continental Tires of Germany. We were a bunch of a rank startup with no funding, a bunch of about 10 people, and these were 40,000 people. And what did we do? We just went and looked for an opportunity. We went and spoke to them and said, well, you know what? What do? We don't do anything except we kind of fill the white spaces. And this guy, the CIO at that time, looked at me very quizzically and said, what do you mean by the white spaces? I said, white spaces are simply the opportunity areas which your internal IT people are not going to take care of and is not attractive for the large players or even the small players. So there are these small cracks through which all your business value really falls through. Just throw all of that over the fence and give it to us. And by the way, India is a great place for you to throw this over. So just to wrap this whole thing up, basically, I think that, our leadership model still comes from the industrial age. We are very paternalistic about the leadership model. Even the conversations we have when we talk about, how do we go forward on this, we always take it from one, the individual perspective that I as a leader, what am I supposed to do? And second, what can I do that I've already done before? And that's what I meant by saying patterns, right? So if something's worked for me before, then let me give that a shot rather than do something that I've never done before, And I think this is the best time for us to try out things that we've never done before. And that will feed very straight into what Himanshu was saying, the beginner's mindset. I've done a lot of design thinking for senior management, design thinking seminars and workshops, etc., etc. And what I tell them is that, get out of this way of working where everything depends on where you are. I put it very succinctly to them. I said, we give ourselves too much credit for where we are today, because it's not just us that has brought us to where we are today. If we are successful and we are in a position where we can help people or do whatever we can, it's not because of our own skills. It's because of the entire environment and the ecosystem that has supported us in bringing us here. We fail to recognize the contribution of everybody else and everything else that has brought us to where we are. So my sense is that if we wanted to disrupt ourselves, we should actually be handing over a lot of the heavy lifting to people who are actually the beneficiaries and get out of the role of leadership. I think we think too much of our capability as leaders. So I think many people pointed out, there's a very positive thing that's come out of the crisis, which is this whole feeling of let's do things together and let's do things for each other. And the more we have over the me that we've learned to grow up with, the more the better it's going to be for all of us going forward. I think I'll wrap up there.
That was excellent.
Thank you, Wendy.
I got stuff to add, Bob, but I'm conscious there's other people who might want to throw something in, but I've got ideas.
Just jump in, Nigel. Go ahead.
So I heard a quote yesterday. We were talking. Well, I was in a session, and followers are responsible for the leaders they have. Was the phrase that was used. Oh. Which, if you think about that, we create the leaders. Leaders and leadership. Yeah, you see, there you go, Sunil. Leaders is not a job title. Leadership or the senior leadership team isn't something you apply to and you get given a job as a leader. I know people do that, but that's wrong. Is that leadership is a characteristic, a set of behaviors, and leaders should emulate the behaviors they want others to follow or others to emulate, and then you become a leader. But I wanted to throw in a couple of things that might be practical, because we are all trying to make sense of what's happening and decide what to do next. And there is a science called sense making. And there are tools out there that help you to do sense making. And this is part of something called weak signal detection. And I've written on a few things on this, is that the warning signs of what was going to happen in this pandemic were available sometime before we all responded. We responded late because that's what we tend to do. We tend to bury our heads in the sand. It won't happen to us. We're more resilient. America's the richest, powerful country in the world. We can't possibly be affected by the pandemic. And then when we were, we reacted too late. And now we're seeing the consequences of it. Massive financial catastrophe on the horizon. And just as when we get in control of the outbreak, we'll go back to normal. And a lot of the good we did is now undone. So we need to start using our human sensor networks. These are our human beings, our employees, our extended networks, our vendors, our partners, all these people we should have relationships with. We should start listening to them using active listening, which is a skill you can learn. It is a technique. People were talking about that much earlier on in the day. And then we can start to detect weak signals. When you've got these people in your employment or in your extended networks who are saying, there's a problem, the Boeing 737 MAX, the Challenger shuttle disaster, they're saying there's a problem, but we're not listening because the systems and the management techniques that we've built, and Sunil was going back to the management styles and techniques are archaic by design and need to change, hence distributed leadership, which is centralized coordination, distributed decision making. So again, human factors are using that extended network of human beings. So basically, weak signal detection, somebody just flashed up a question, is about putting in place techniques and tools, and they do exist, too long to go into more now, but techniques and tools that exist to allow you to detect patterns, outliers, to detect weak signals, voices that are telling you there's a problem with quality, there's a problem with safety, there's a problem with health. And not to ignore those by being driven with this fixation bias, this sort of, love aversion bias, which is I'm only going to do the thing that I'm fixated on, open those new stores, build up my business empire, etc., etc., etc. We have to start listening to people. And that's not just in business, it's in all walks of life, in these very challenging social problems that we have. And then start understanding those weak signals and then start making sense of them and start reacting on them. These are skills that can be learned and can be taught, and they are practical ways of dealing with some of the challenges we're now facing. But we do need those leaders to be participatory and engaged in understanding this and embracing this, and not being so dogmatic and pig-headed to believe they have all the right answers and to demand that we just follow them blindly because they're a leader.
Excellent point.
One thing, Himanshu put a whole list of qualities in the chat. And I'm curious, Himanshu, if you could speak to, if you were to just speak to maybe one or two of those, what would you say, as Nigel was just speaking to this as well, what would you say would be maybe the top two in this moment that you would say leaders really need to be stepping into in terms of new behaviors?
I think there is a timeless component which will always stand by, and I would put authenticity and purpose in that timeless component. In the timely component is about how agile you are and you can adopt a new model. I love the movie Matrix, Keanu Reeves. When there is a new situation, he prepares, he empties his mind, and there's a new software uploaded and he's ready for the next mission. So one of the organization, I was having a conversation with people and they were saying, what do we do now? Our business model is irrelevant. Our products are irrelevant. There is no market for us. What do we do? So I said, see, go back to the ancient period when the human beings were just being evolved. What are the 4 basic jobs they did? And after some conversation, we homed on to 4 words. All of us were either a hunter or a sourcer or a provider or a seeker. So for a minute, drop this idea that I'm a chartered accountant or I'm an AI guy or a big data fellow or everything. Can we go back to the 4 basic instincts given that we are a hunter, sourcer, seeker, and provider, and then look at from these 4 lenses what we could do? And it is this framework which is enabling companies like JLR to prepare or manufacture ventilators, perfume making companies to go on to make sanitizer. So for the moment, they dropped who they were in the past and they quickly adopted what they could do now. And this is the lens of staying relevant. And here the role of leaders is very important, is to free them up from the past logics, because the past logic has been created for a situation that has already happened. That's why I always rate common sense far more valued and treasured than expertise, because for me, expertise means narrow, common sense is abundant, and in that you can find many aspects.
Excellent. Hey, gentlemen, we've got about 10 minutes left. I was going to try and get some final thoughts. Himanshu, do you have any final thoughts for the folks today? Any final thoughts on did you want to get out and give a chance to get your final thoughts?
Yes. So in this spirit, 2 thoughts, and they're always goal to me. First, learning first, relevance later. Learn as much as possible you can. Second is relationship first, outcomes later. I think this period we can abundantly use to learn and build relationship which would create the value for future.
Excellent. Primi, any final thoughts?
You're on mute. There we go.
There you go.
Yeah. The leader at this time needs to improve 4 factors: economic, operational, human is the more important now because the people is broken, and reputational level in the companies with a great common purpose from the human level, from self-leadership to create networks leadership in the companies and to move outside the companies to the customers, because this is awareness is the more important now to move for the future, to prepare the people for the next offensive in the future and design actions of defense in your company to improve and to create a new mindset with new leaderships, not leaders, human leaderships, because you need to validate the impact of this defense for the new crisis in the future, identify new practice, new mindsets, new behaviors to adapt and to to move for the company. And finally, you need always a learning mindset, to grow mindset, to improve your process in your company, to prepare to the future for the people. If you broke or you lost the people in your company, you never create value. You have a lot of customers, but if you don't put the focus in your human value in your company, you lost your company. Always. This is a Toyota way mindset. Is the sense of the purpose for the people. You need customers to create revenue and to create value, but if you lost your human value in your company, your employees, you never need more customers. Because
Excellent.
your company is dead, and it's more near than the people maybe think.
Thank you, Primi.
Want to go, Mark? You want to take a shot at final thoughts?
Yeah.
For us today?
Yeah, I'm just trying to, just thinking through a lot of the themes that kind of came up in the conversation. I guess I'll kind of bring it back to kind of as I take a step back and think about kind of from a leadership perspective, why I think there's been a void. It is this progression through the change curve, which I think is fairly well kind of documented and known. And sometimes we don't kind of take a step back and look at that. But I think we've talked about topics of kind of fear, blaming, frustration, denial, and then kind of moving towards, kind of more of the exploration and experimentation. And then eventually, we get to acceptance, we get to alignment, and we get to people working together to move forward. I think as leaders in industry, I think employees and the people we work with, our clients, need to have trust in the leadership and the direction. And I think, so I think what's most important is to realize kind of where we are, and kind of take the time for the self-reflection and to engage others in that collaborative process, to think about now is the time to innovate, now is the time to think about new ideas, bring those ideas to the forefront, pull them together, and create shared plans for moving forward. I think we also have a responsibility as citizens, corporate and in our own communities, to help others go through that process as well. So I think this forum and this panel has been a great kind of exploration of these topics, and I think we need more of this kind of moving forward. So.
Awesome, thank you, Mark. Nigel, how about you?
I was furiously scribbling things down as all these people are speaking, like, yes. What Primi said, leadership over leaders, was fantastic. A lot of people are commenting that as well. As I know, there's another one I'll throw out there. A friend of mine, Brian, came up with teamwork over frameworks is another good one you can bank for another day. From multi-team systems, well, from team science, which studies multi-team systems, the interactions of multiple groups working together to achieve an outcome. The interactions of the agents are more important than the agents themselves. It's the interactions between people that matter more than the people themselves. And that's a really important lesson from team science. And just another thing I'll throw out there, I was talking to Dave Snowden the other day, and everybody's very familiar with Dave's work in complexity theory and complexity thinking. Case studies aren't very valuable. Context matters. So just because it worked there doesn't mean it's going to work here. And that's the problem a lot of people make when trying to copy Toyota, is they go see Toyota do this fantastic, great thing. They copy the tools, but they don't copy the behaviors. And context really matters.
Absolutely.
Sunil.
Sunil.
So I'm going to wrap up at a much higher level, maybe 30,000, 60,000 feet, so that, this introductory panel can take some of these points forward in the remaining session. So one of the things that I would like to, I just made up was that the new leadership is no leadership. So can we have something called an unplanned organization, right? can we allow people to run the organization with us just playing a very new kind of a leadership role. The second thing is that I think that in the themes, right? So there's something called, we've been talking about new normal, and I know Sai has a big problem with the word normal and the new normal, and he keeps talking about the abnormal, which is absence of normal. So what I've figured out is that, the best way to get out of this is that instead of looking for a normal, which is normally a state of equilibrium and stability, let's embrace chaos, right? And so then why don't we call it the new possible instead of the new normal? So if we could move it to the new possible, then it changes the whole context and the connotation of the discussions that we are having. And I also, in the same token, what I also feel is that there is no such thing as future-proof, and it doesn't make sense to have something that's future-proof, because what you need to have is a future that's equally chaotic, that's equally uncertain, that's equally exciting, that's equally rewarding, than to try and do something that protects you from the future. Because the connotation of a future-proof future is that I do something today and it protects me. So that's the other one. The third point I'd like to make is that probably, and this goes into what Himanshu also said about the beginner's mindset, I think we all forgot to learn to play. And we made everything work, right? So I think if we can relearn play and think of that as the future of work, everything changes, because, even what we've done just now is kind of very playful. It wasn't very structured. It wasn't that, there's one question and go around the panel. It's like, it's very fluid, very emergent. And I think that's a lot of fun. Don't you think? Don't you think we enjoyed ourselves doing it this way? I did. I don't know, for one. And the last point I'd like to just like to make is, in the design thinking world and whatever we've talked about doing, we always talk about the beginner's mindset. And then we move the beginner's mindset into saying be childlike in the way you approach things. So I did a very quick exercise at Idea Farms a few months ago. And I asked my team, I said, we go and tell everybody about a beginner's mindset. And do we have a beginner's mindset? So let's now start writing down on the whiteboard a few keywords that tell us what a beginner's mindset is. And we made a huge list of almost about 15, 16 words that were out there. And I looked at them and I asked everybody, and I said, to me, these look like adult beginners' mindsets and not child's beginners' mindsets, right? Because see, we are superimposing our thinking into what a child might think. Whereas I think what we need to do is to start connecting back with the child we were when we were 6, 7 years old, where everything was, open, and you didn't care about the impression you were making on people. You didn't care about whether you succeeded with something or not. All you did was you played, you enjoyed yourself, and you got excited about anything that you saw around. So I think, on that note, I think I think we are in good shape, and we have a great, bright future ahead.
Excellent. Relearn to play. I like that.
Thank you so much for bearing with me.
You're excellent. Thank you. So I think we're out of time.
Right on time.
Yeah, perfect. I just want to say thank you for the time, gentlemen. I really enjoyed the conversation. Wendy, thank you for the conversation as well, and looking forward to the rest of the day.
Yeah, thank you all.